Wow. Pink pop-up, go on.
It's linear, like they're well catchable carp.
He's literally, oh no, he's done you.
So you must have gone away from that thinking, this rig isn't.
I remember thinking,
Hang on, he's looking at it. Gaz, you're going to get a bite in your hand. You have to be able to perform under pressure.
it's come off, El. It's gone.
Wow.
Is he dropping?
Is he going for it?
He looked at it.
You got one, mate, you got one.
Yeah. I've gathered. Well, that was quicker than expected. Hadn't even snapped my bail arm shut.
We need the rigs close to the camera.
Gonna be very close.
Oh my God, your lead is on top of the maggot.
To sit behind the camera and to watch fish feeding, I feel that common's getting caught.
Yes.
Fair to say that hook bait worked. 30 seconds. It got to the point in the end where I was like, if a fish comes into the swim and it comes anywhere near that pink hook bait, it's gonna see it, it's gonna take it, and it's gonna get hooked. Any second now. Spotted the ping. I hate it when they turn like that. Get in. Yes.
It's the lake's largest
What is it?
carp.
46?
48, Rich said.
48.
And in terms of spomming, it was the big mystery of the trip.
You've got bait in the spom, yeah, 100%. Definitely bait in the spom. Big carp and birds go hand in hand.
Going for it.
Yes. I did feel a bit sorry for Gaz.
You are joking, Elliot.
You've hooked the pike. This is the fish, that one at the back.
It was really exciting to catch one so quickly. Question is, which one is it?
Dave thinks it's the common.
Is it? Get a bite, hook one, drops off.
This project has probably been 2 years in the making. We'd longed to make an underwater film with Gaz, and unfortunately, it had been cancelled on 2 previous occasions for various reasons. But it gives me great pleasure to finally be able to say that we have now completed our mission and the films are ready to watch. This is the first chapter in what I'm calling a new Cypography, and this is Gaz Fareham at Linear Fisheries, Hardwick Lake.
You got any old ones?
I don't think I've got any really old ones.
You look young now, though.
Yeah, a bit less grey. That was that massive one. That one's like, I think it's like a mid-40, that thing now. I mean, that Hardwick Lynn's probably the best of the ones that I've caught out of there. Yeah, this one, the Hardwick Lynn. Ironically, actually, I caught that from Manor, but it came over, I think, in the floods, maybe, I want to say, years previous. Really nice one, one of the old ones as well. Watched it hook itself in the edge. I had a little PVA bag on that I'd lowered in. It came round, spooked off the bag first time round, spread the contents of the bag. I thought it was a chance gone. Came back round a couple of minutes later, just nailed the hook bait straight away. Yeah, amazing. That was early March, that was as well. Just on the back of the riverbank on Manor in that little bay. He was a nice one. Baby Kempies, I think they call it. And that was just on a zig, blasted out into the middle of Manor though, that one. Definitely didn't watch that one hook itself. Lovely carp though. The other side is nice as well. I'd love to have caught a couple of the old original, like the birthmark or the random cut tail. Like those era ones were great, but they were absolutely stacked in there off the back of the wind. Really early in the year it was. It was like, I remember it being one of the first days that spring where it had felt like spring, where the sun had any warmth in it, and they'd stacked in this bay. I remember like the lads on the road bank were all just, you know, still fishing out long into the middle. No one was really catching anything either. And yeah, they were just stacked up in the shallow water off the back of the wind. It really looks like the big one's got like the same shaped head and that. Bear in mind, this was 2004, and the Oxley's stockies back then were just like little Simmos. Yeah, that was like 30 odd pound, and I remember it just felt like a really old carp. Yeah, random one as well. I'd done a feature on St John's with Roman in the snow. It was because it was freezing. I think it was January. We'd caught a few, wrapped up that feature, and we just thought, I will put like chance our arm. Went over to Oxley's, saw a couple, flicked a couple of singles out, and managed to catch that one, unbelievably. As an angler, I think I've just always been fascinated by looking into water. I think the desire to see under the surface to try and understand what's going on, and just to get a window into a world that is otherwise inaccessible is just fascinating. It's always captivating. I've always really fancied doing one of the underwater films. Back in, I think maybe around about 2012, something like that, when Corda were doing the underwater film at St John's, I actually got the call from Ali partway through to see if I could come and do 2, 3, 4 days or something in front of the camera. Unfortunately, back then I was teaching and I couldn't that wasn't a legitimate excuse to get some time off. So I unfortunately never got to do it, and I always remember being really quite disappointed. Like, I loved the idea of going and putting my rigs and baits that I trusted in front of the camera. And, you know, I think there's always the inevitable kind of situation when you're sitting and watching somebody else put their rigs and their baits in front of the camera. I think there's probably a little bit of most people that are thinking, nah, if my stuff was out there, I'd have had that one. Like, my rigs would be working that little bit better. My hook baits would have done more in that situation. And I think undeniably there was probably a little bit of that as well. Perhaps a little bit of an arrogance in some respects, thinking that, you know, my stuff might do a little bit better than stuff that I'd seen on camera before. I was also really prepared to be humbled by the fact that perhaps it wasn't going to play out like that as well. And I was just well up for the challenge and seeing what happened. Going back to Linear, strangely, I think in some respects, it almost felt like full circle for me to go and film the underwater at Linear. Obviously, the original Corda one that I couldn't make was the one where Elle caught the big common famously on the hinge after it had been in there and not been hooked like for days and days and days on all the bits. He's put the hinge out there, hasn't he? And he's caught it pretty much straight away, pretty quickly. So yeah, it just felt really nice actually to have the opportunity to go back to Linear to do that. Hardwick is actually one of the lakes on the complex that I haven't really fished much at all. I've done a little bit on St John's. Out of all of them, it's probably Manor that I've fished the most. I haven't really done loads on any of them, but I kind of, over the years, an odd night here, an odd night there, caught some really nice ones out there, and I've always just enjoyed the challenge actually of fishing like a busy day ticket kind of lake. Like, I think it's challenging in a different way to a lot of the fishing that I normally do week to week. And yeah, in a funny sort of way, I've always relished that. So yeah, Hardwick, Smiths in particular, is known for having like a really good stock of really nice ones, and also some really cool old ones as well. So there was always half the chance that you might just catch, you know, one of those nice old Oxford Scalies potentially as well. I think some lads might think that perhaps Linear is kind of, you know, maybe not my natural habitat, shall we say. I guess most of the writing and stuff that I've done over the years and a lot of the stuff I've shared, it's kind of generally been from the like lower stock, big fish waters. But actually, like, I have done quite a lot of fishing on really, really busy and day ticket lakes over the years. You know, everything from the years when I did the BCAC with Ali, back when I was with Corda, to the years spent doing the tuitions. The vast majority of them were on really busy, pressured day ticket lakes, going right back to when I used to do the day ticket series for Carp Talk with Roman. I've done loads over the years on those sort of lakes, and you know, sometimes it's just been for like socials with mates, a little fill-in in between campaign fishing or whatever, but I have genuinely always really enjoyed it. Like I say, it's just because it's different from the norm perhaps, and it's a challenge. I think I've always relished it. And I think out of all the kind of day ticket complexes all over the country, you know, Linear has kind of got to be the sort of crystallization of like all those elements: busy, pressured, lots of carp, lots of nice carp, and yeah, just a kind of great place to go and get a few bites. So Hardwick in particular, I think prior to this trip, I think I'd only done a couple of nights, and it was a random couple of nights. I can't even really remember why I was there. I remember I moved in behind Martin Bowler, who'd caught a bunch from right at the back of Smith's, fishing his big maggot feeders years ago. I went in after him, caught a couple more, but that was the only time that I've actually ever fished that lake. Hardwick for me has always been sort of, I suppose, the lesser, somehow like the lesser known, the lesser documented, somehow the lesser talked about of all the kind of popular linear lakes. I kind of remember, you know, little snippets of Nick Hellier fishing it back in the day, the sort of Realtree, Pepper Army sort of era. I can recall a few pictures of Frank fishing it back in the day. I suppose the one thing that I remember in recent times in particular about Hardwick is a few years ago now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, for a couple of winters, seeing loads of pictures of young Terry Woods shots from Hardwick. Classic kind of like bleak winter backdrops, like leafless trees and that, and just these lovely dark, like chocolate brown, scaly mirrors. I think the other thing about Hardwick that's really quite interesting as well is the topography. Hardwick's always been known for being a bit of an egg box, big, pronounced, really interesting features, steep drop-offs off the back of bars, and also just the nature of the fact that it's got the little cut through into the little back lake, I think also makes it quite interesting. Like they're two very different sort of lakes. One feels really quite intimate, like the kind of bit of water where you're going to go and catch them out at the edge, or maybe on floaters in the summer or something like that. And then the big half, like that's got the road bank on it, and that it feels much more like a kind of, you know, windswept Oxford gravel pit. Catches the wind, looks a bit less interesting, you know, but they love a big show and stuff out there as well, which always, you know, makes the fishing interesting and exciting. So yeah, I think, you know, as far as lakes go, it's got a lot going for it. It's a really interesting pit. In some respects, Hardwick is really quite similar in makeup to a lot of the lakes that I've been fishing in the previous couple of years. So in terms of how I wanted to approach it, the sort of rigs that I wanted to put out there, the sort of bait I was going to use, how I was going to approach it, I didn't overthink it. I didn't want to overthink it, and to be honest, the entire plan was just to approach it exactly as I had been all my other fishing for the previous few years, with just the simple rigs that I trusted, the baits that I use week in, week out, a couple of tiny little tweaks, perhaps for linear, chucked a few extra cans of corn in, and bought some worm. But really, other than that, like I suppose in a slightly selfish way, like I didn't necessarily want to try and catch as many carp as I possibly could in front of the camera, or try anything sort of, you know, outlandish or different. Like I just wanted to see what I use week in, week out, and how it performed in reality. In my heart, I was like 99.9% convinced that all those things were going to work, but I've seen loads of underwater films over the years, and I've seen loads of stuff get turned over. So I'd have been an absolute fool to think that I was just going to turn up and it was all going to work perfectly. But yeah, I was pretty confident that it would. But also, I was really, really curious to see if there was anything that was just a complete fallacy, that I really believed for years had worked, but just absolutely didn't in practice. So yeah, that was what I was really interested in seeing. I think there's sometimes quite a few misconceptions in carp fishing, and I think there's a lot of hot air talked about rigs. I don't believe that there is any kind of definitive answer. You know, everything is changing all the time. I don't believe that, you know, the rigs that I'm using now will necessarily be the best rigs in every situation, but I've always believed that having confidence in what you do is incredibly important. And you know, I use different rigs to everybody else out there, you know, and they're all catching loads of carp as well. That in itself shows you that there is no completely definitive answer out there to like what is the best thing to use. I think you having confidence in something and you using it really, really well are the most important things. So I suppose for me, I was just really hoping that I would have that confidence validated, I suppose, in front of my eyes, and it not just be kind of something that I believed worked. I mean, you judge your rigs on the basis of how well they hook the fish, how many you catch, you know, what you're seeing and whether you feel like you should be catching, and you make little adjustments sort of here and there based on that. But to actually see it in front of a camera is a different story.